thank you very much, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the future and answering questions that you have.
I guess I'll go. I need a little bit of time to formulate good questions, but I think I have 2 questions right off the bat. Is it okay if I ask them?
Oh yeah, Claire, yes. Ask away. And we could have another time. I'm happy to come on another time and you could ask questions. We could record it too and use it.
All right, great. I'll just ask the first question, relatively simple. Is there a reason that you decided to choose to study botany in specific?
Yes. I grew up on a market gardening farm and started a lifelong learning process of following plants and what they have to tell us about how they can, not how we can enjoy them, but how they can help us in leading healthy lifestyles.
All right, cool. And I have a second question regarding to what we just saw from your presentation. I think it's honestly a very cool concept. However, do you think there are any hurdles that we need to overcome in order to implement this as kind of a widespread standard or system? Should this be in the hands of the government? Should this be market regulated? Should consumers be able to demand it? How do you see this realistically playing out?
It's a really good question. In the early days, we launched some of the first tools using their products that they could tell the consumers, hey, look, we test and make sure these ingredients are what we say they are on the label. So that was a challenge that was overcome, and it was led by industry. And then more industry members started to adopt it. Today, launching in nuclear magnetic resonance is very difficult because NMR brings together different scientific domains, not just biochemistry and spectroscopy, but physics, because we're dealing with molecular structure, mathematics, because we have to model it, starting to make a tea or coffee library before you know it.
That sounds very cool, and I'd love to see that happen in the future. All right, while you were answering the question, I got another question in the meanwhile.
Awesome.
In the future, are there any sort of breakthroughs that you hope to see happen or anything that you're working on currently?
Efficacy, but also new medicines based on plants, so plant medicine. And that would be very exciting.
That does sound exciting. That's all the questions I have for now. If anyone else wants to take the mic, it's right here.
Thanks, Claire.
My name's Anderson, and I'm a young reporter from ACPN.
My first question is, what's your favorite plant and what are its characteristics? Thanks for your answer. And then third question is in today's world, there are many other options for medicine. Like you could get a prescription for pills and other stuff. So the question is, why would medicinal plants be a better option compared to any other medicine that we have today?
That's a good question. The allopathic pharmaceutical approach is very much needed.
Hi, Dr. Stephen E. Master. So
Hi,
during your presentation, a lot of the research was with the final goal of taking these supplements to have a healthy lifestyle. So the word healthy lifestyle was used so many times in your presentation. So I was wondering, what does a healthy lifestyle mean to you?
I have a question. This question is a rather fun question, so it's just diving into your past a little bit. So you said in your presentation that you've been to many different countries. What were some of the plants that you worked with or experimented with that were quite rare or exotic?
So here is some questions from Bob.
Oh, okay. So the first one is, what are some of the techniques you use to check the qualities of a botanical or probiotic ingredients? So I'll actually focus on probiotics. I haven't talked about those yet. So one of the scientists on our...
My name's Anderson, and I'm a young reporter from ACPN.
Mostly based on what I saw in your profile, mostly nutritional stuff, and maybe less related to the presentation you put on today.
Yes.
So if that's okay, I can just ask the questions now.
Oh yeah, professors like questions.
So first, what is the main cause of most cardiovascular diseases?
What's the main cause? Is that your question?
Yep.
Well, of course, are multifactorial. We certainly know that high blood cholesterol is.
Thanks. So my other question is like, what are some symptoms of a stroke? Like very visible symptoms.
Yeah.
And
Well,
at what time would it be lethal?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I'm not a medical doctor. And so Foundation of Ontario or Canadian Heart Foundation, those two, on their website, they have all this information in very good detail.
Right, I'll
and
just
easy to
ask my
read.
question now. Hello, my name is Claire. I'm one of the ACPN Young Reporters, and I really enjoyed listening to your presentation. Although there are like some terms I probably didn't understand, given that I'm still in high school, I still have like some questions that I would like to ask you. So first, just a general question, like, do you have like a method you prefer for intaking omega nutrients, like either through like natural methods like eating fish or eating supplements? Is there a difference?
Well, certainly as a nutritionist, we would, advise a good healthy diet to include fish, if possible. It's a good idea to do so. But a lot of people want to take supplements to make sure they're getting the target omega-3 levels.
Thank you for your answer. This is also like a concern I had previously, like, with biomagnification and like a lot of toxins in the water traveling up to the fish. Some people may not want to eat these or may not be allowed to eat these because of the toxins. But on to the next question. I read a little bit about you prior to your presentation, and having been in like many leadership positions, what would you say is the hardest thing about leading a big organization, if there is any?
You don't know. Say, I'm sorry, I can't tell you right now, but I'll look it up and give you an answer. And I think that's always a good strategy. Don't have to pretend to know it all, because none of us do. What are you in high school or college?
I'm in high school.
Well, you're going to do well in university. Yeah, I can tell already with the questions you're asking and just asking questions. That's absolutely fantastic. You're going to do well.
That's very flattering coming from you.
I tell it like it is.
All right. This is more of an extension of the next question. This is more of an extension of the first question I asked, but in the chart that is being presented on the screen right now, I see that there's like a trend of people who get these omega nutrients typically live near coastal water, like eat a lot of fish. For people who don't live near these regions, are there any ways to would supplements be good for them? Or
I think of people. I think supplements are very. They only cost 20, 30 cents, 40 cents, maybe 50 cents for 2 or 3 capsules in some areas. So I think supplementation is a very important role in those areas where, for whatever reason, the population is not consuming very much fish.
All right, I have one last question. Thank you for your answer, by the way. In the future, do you foresee a plan in which you can get more and more people to consume these nutrients? Because as of right now, I think you've already stated in the statistics that we are not consuming very much fish or having enough supplementation. So in the future, do you think there is an obligation for promotion of these sort of nutrients or some action to be done?
I think absolutely right. You're absolutely right on. I totally agree with you. Omega-3 story, there's omega-3. I don't see it being discussed on health programs on TV. I know I did some interviews years ago on omega-3 on CTV and CBC and all that, but you're not seeing hardly any discussion in the health programs or by medical programs on the importance of EPA and DHA omega-3 for all these applications that I discussed today. So education is really important. I think education in the schools, beginning with grade 1, I think we should start teaching nutrition, not just omega-3, of course, but nutrition and health in general, good eating, right from the beginning in kindergarten right on through. So I think the educational system has not been supplying the information to our young people that they so very much deserve and should be getting.
Thank you for your answer. I could agree with that statement, seeing as to how all this information was completely new to me prior to this presentation. That's all the questions I have for now. Again, thank you for answering, and I'll pass it back to Carrie.
Let me just restart. So, hello, Dr. Bruce. My name is Ruchin from ACPN Young Reporters, and I just have a question to ask. Based on your presentation, it looks like you're very passionate about this topic. Is there any specific reason why you're interested in this, like omega-3 research?
Of EPA and DHA consumption. So all of these contributed, and people in the field who I got to know, professors in the field internationally, and spent time with many of them. And so that just inspired me even further and further to make this a focus of my research career.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's very interesting. Thank you for your time and your answer.
Are you a student?
Yes, I am a student.
Where are you studying? What are you studying?
I'm not in university yet. In fact, I'm only in middle school right now.
Yeah, I mean, you say only in middle school, but by you and one of your young colleague who asked some questions earlier, I'm really impressed with you young people. You're the future, so we're in good hands.
All right, thank you very much.
Before, as we get our young reporters seated, I just wanted to give an absolute incredible shout out to the volunteers for today, and also to Thomas and Carrie, who put on a wonderful, wonderful show. So thank you very much to our volunteers and to Thomas and Carrie. Thank you. I also want to, listen, you guys, your questions were great. Yours was a fantastic question. Thank you very much. Yours was a fantastic question. The questions that all of you asked today were really, really intuitive. Okay, before we break up, we've got our ACPN reporters here. And I'm going to give you an opportunity. This is the only time that these guys are going to sit here and they can't leave. Does anybody want to ask any of them a question? Okay, watch this. Ask her.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Victoria, and I have a question for all of the panelists. So today we had hours worth of presentations by all of you guys. We've learned stuff like leadership, how we should reduce saturated fat, sodium, sugars, but we also shouldn't restrict too much or else we'll binge. And heavy metals are horrible for us. Omega-3 is really important. It's important to manage stress. Magnesium is very important. Some of us have too much iron or zinc. There's so much information, and honestly, I feel quite overwhelmed with the diversity. And I remember one person said, it's always important to take the smallest step, even like if anything, because I don't think any of the audience can go home and follow every single thing, because that'd be so overwhelming. So any of you guys, when we go home, what do you think is the first step we can do to improve our nutrition overall?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, by the way, and I wish I could say the simple thing to do is go home and take a genetic test, but I won't say that. A simple thing, I think, is to, again, I think one of the speakers mentioned, kind of look at your pantry and look at some of the things that you recognize are probably not healthy food choices. So if you're preparing your own lunch for school tomorrow and you're looking at, what to pack as a snack, you have options. And given all that you heard today, and probably even if you hadn't heard all of this, you probably recognize potato chips, cookies, apples, carrots. You can probably weigh what's better than the other. And it doesn't mean you have to go cold turkey and just cut out everything, because as we heard earlier, that's probably not going to work. It's not going to be sustainable. But I think, set yourself some targets. Even if you say, okay, Mondays and Wednesdays, I'm going to go for, something green as opposed to something that's packaged and tastes delicious. And just those small steps, and eventually you'll develop those habits and improve your overall eating habits that way.
Yeah, I agree as well with Dr. Ahmed. So the same thing as well, like I think there is a key word, moderation. So
nutritionists mentioned that. I see it because I see the results. Your sodium and potassium is too high. It's too concentrated. You know, you don't have enough fluids in your body. So that's another one.
Relationship with food. We love food. Let's keep it that way. Don't be scared of it. Don't be restricting. Enjoy your food. Have a good relationship with food. Number 2, Health Canada recommends making half your plate vegetables and fruit. So this is really easy to implement. It's not a supplement, it's what you eat every day. So when you're cooking or putting your dinner plate together or whatever, draw a line halfway down your plate and half of it arrange for fruit. First vegetables and fruit. Doesn't matter what kind. The more color, the better. Quarter protein, quarter
functioning food process and nutraceutical process, health promoting food process. From my research point of view, how to benefit from the consumer. One question is, we should use different low temperature and processing to keep all health promoting compounds stabilized, first one. Second one is how to make these health promoting compounds easier to absorption and available for our body. So this means we should consider how their absorption. I want to give some information about our research. And 5 years ago, we collected more than 100 nutrition products from a supermarket. After analysis, 80% products is much less function as their labeling discussion. 50% is no help for health. So what is this situation? The question is, so much products in the supermarket, consumer costs a lot of money, but they didn't get health function help. Just get is the feeling is all products in the supermarket. You can buy it, but as consumer, we can't get real result as the product's information. So this is should ask industry have more research, more technology, and more processing. Then can guarantee us his product is good quality. So consumer can't decide which one is better because they have no ability to taste these products.
Given what Lucia just said and the scary thing that Dr. John just said, how do you as a parliamentarian make sure that Canadians feel safe that what you're doing in Ottawa through Health Canada is actually making good progress to keep people safe for the food that they're eating?
Sure, thanks. So I'm going to start by saying how great it is to be here. And I think it says a lot about the vital work that this organization does at ACPN to have a health leader like Marc here today to moderate this panel. You know, what we eat ultimately impacts our health, and you've obviously heard that over the course of today from all of the great research here. And so I wonder, as we take a look at the ongoing challenges that we're reading about, that we're hearing with healthcare now, as proud as we can be of our system, we know that there's more that can be done. And I think having ACPN and all of the people that are part of your organization who's playing a vital role in our health system further formalized is a good thing. I'll cross for a moment into provincial jurisdiction. I think it should.
That was a good question. Before we move on to the next question, if you don't mind, I'd like to maybe add a corollary to your question and for you, Kevin. So one of the things that this young reporter had suggested was that she feels overwhelmed with information that's out there. Your government right now is looking at trying to, I'm going to use the capital R word, regulate what's out there on the internet, on social media and other platforms. What kinds of things do you think would help to add less fear to the kinds of questions you heard from this young reporter about the information that's out there in public?
It's an interesting question. I mean, yes, it's true. We are going through the process of figuring out how do we ensure that the internet continues to be a place for constructive, safe dialogue so that we can learn without fear of being harassed or worse. And unfortunately, it continues to be an ongoing challenge.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, before I get on to, look at this. This is technology at its finest. We have one of our esteemed panel members who's on the phone. So
very well.
Okay, so let me just do this. We had a very rich discussion. All of us were scared by some of the comments made by some of the panel members, and we have a member of Parliament here, as well as a group of young reporters who are asking very probative questions. Why don't you give us 2 minutes on what you think the role of a nutritionist could be, especially with the experience that you have?
Sure, sounds good, Mark. The work that we do is looking at the ingredients that are used in supplements, natural health products, to see whether or not they're actually what they say they are on the label. And it's work that we've been doing at the University of Guelph and the NHA Research Alliance for over a decade now. And unfortunately, sometimes those ingredients that are on the label aren't in the product. So one thing that nutritionists can do, consumers can do, is look for those companies that actually test to make sure that what they're sourcing and what's on the labels is actually verified and is in the product. Not all companies do this at different levels of testing. And I'll just give you an example. We use genomic test to be able to identify the identity of a specific species in a product. And say it's ginkgo biloba, we can look for ginkgo DNA. The other thing we can do is look at those active phytochemicals, the chemicals the plant makes, and make sure that they're in the product. And more than that, look at the metabolomic fingerprint to see if those metabolites are in the product, and they're the same every time. And we've heard some comments today on the panel about consistency in a product and also longevity, so a shelf life, and to understand dose. And that can be tested through metabolomic fingerprint. So these things are important. These are things we can do. One comment I'll just add, because one of the reporters, young reporters, asked, what can we do to improve our nutrition? And one thing I would add, and it's something that I do, is mixing nutrition with activity, sports. Just getting out a little bit, and at the same time thinking about what nutrients am I going to take while I'm out, and I'm out in the field actually right now, so that I have a healthy day. I have proteins to building muscle, I have carbohydrates to give me energy, I'm taking lots of moisture. So the mixture of activity and sports with food is a very important thing to consider as well.
Super. Thank you very much, David. That's great. And that certainly captures some of the things that you said earlier on as our panel of experts. I want to give an opportunity to some of our young reporters to ask a question. I've got one right over here. Get ready. Okay.
My name is Claire. I'm another one of the ACPN Young Reporters. In many of your presentations, I noticed kind of a common theme, which is personal responsibility, right? You have to go out by yourself, take action to your own health by doing things such as, seeing a nutritionist, getting planned diets for yourself, seeing the doctor, etc., and also restricting your junk foods and choosing what works for you. All of this takes a lot of effort. However, I don't think it's any coincidence that I think one of the presentations mentioned that around 70 to 80% of people in the US are overweight, right? If everyone had this sort of personal choice and personal responsibility, I think that people still have somewhat of an incentive to eat healthy, but I'm also not shocked at the percentage of overweight people in the US, since there are a lot of corporations that try to advertise to you. They push so many different products to you, I want to come buy our product, this tastes really good, with a lot of colors. So in regards to this, what would your opinion be on, should nutrition be purely in the hands of the individuals to take care of, or should there be policies set in place to benefit everyone and make sure that everyone is able to get kind of the nutrition they need? These policies can look, for example, education, I think some countries have even reduced the portion size. What are your opinions on this?
Super. That's a great question. Let's start with you, Dr. John. Scare these people.
For this nutraceutical function food, a health food, now the key question now is absorption. Industrial products, a lot of physical health food, because this is a hard topic, but keep their natural property, one thing. Another is how to improve the absorption. For example, lycopene from tomato is good for health. But if you eat raw tomato, fresh tomato, just as fruit, very little benefit. Because we eat tomato, the key question is a chemical as lycopene. Lycopene against cancer and improve your immune system. In lycopene is the most rich source is tomato. Another fruit vegetable very little. So if you eat this tomato as a fresh tomato, raw tomato, absorption is very little. How does this work? You should cook, pour some oil together. It's easy to absorption. This is just an example. Another thing we should do to improve absorption. This means that we increase absorption, make these health promoting compounds and absorption by our body, and have function.
Plate veggies. Great question about government versus responsibility. I think in my practice, it's both, really. I mean, it starts with the person, information, but many people know what they should do, but that should is hard to do.
Great, thanks. Kevin, I do, based on the work that you're doing in anti-poverty, could you chime in too and give a response to this reporter's question?
Yeah, so Marc talked a little bit earlier about how I think government's role, and I agree with this, is to ensure that we're helping to provide safety and confidence to Canadians that what you're eating is safe. But also, at the end of the day, one of the best things about this country is you get to choose a lot of things, including you having the freedom to choose what you choose to eat. I think government's role is to help to ensure that, in addition to being safe, is that you know what nutrients or not that you're getting with what you're eating. A personal example, though perhaps counterintuitive.
Dr. Beaumier?
I think what you brought up, personal responsibility is important. But we've heard today that when people are given their lab tests, they do take responsibility. They implement diets better. as opposed to going at it blindly. So, the more testing, the more dietitians getting involved with the testing, with their patients, I think will help the general public. If somebody is obese, they know they're obese, but they don't know what's happening inside. The detrimental parts of what's happening to them. But when they see a report with all these big red lines, they say, oh, I better do something about this. So I think that's one aspect of taking that personal responsibility is really getting a real look at yourself, as opposed to saying, well, I'm a little overweight, but that's okay, because everybody else is. I think that makes a difference.
Thanks, Pierre. Repeat.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I agree with everyone here, but meanwhile, I add one thing. So back to the holistic approach, government actually has a role in terms of actually making sure there is regulations for the product basically we have available for us. But on the other hand, as well, integration in terms of actually nutritionists work very closely with the health professionals. We are the one to do testing. We are the one to produce basically science and come up with findings to seek the routes actually to implement, so benefit basically from them. Otherwise, why we do the research? Why, so those are very integral, I think, points, and again, increase the collaboration levels among all of us.
Super, thank you.
Thank you.
Ahmed?
Sure. I just want to say that's a very mature and sophisticated question, and I'm all about free choices, and I think those are great, of course. But sometimes I think we might need some regulations to protect the most vulnerable, including those who perhaps because of poor education are not able to make those informed choices. Just as an example. Next time you're in the supermarket, go to the soft drink section and look at how much it costs for a small 200 ml can of Coca-Cola, and then look at the much bigger one. It's cheaper to buy the bigger one. So hardly anyone will go and buy that little one that kind of regulates your amount that you're consuming. Food industry is out to sell as much food as possible, to try to make you eat as much as possible. And as you heard from Kevin, the same restaurant like McDonald's in different countries have different portion sizes. You might be too young to remember a movie called Super Size Me, but it's probably on Netflix. Look it up. And sometimes some corporations have to be shamed into taking action. And so sometimes it happens in that respect, and other times perhaps policies might need to be implemented to at least make consumers aware of what the food industry is doing, because, and you can't blame them, they're a company and they are trying to make money and as much money as possible, but it's not in our best interest to always consume as much as we can. So I think the end of the day, definitely where you can get educated so you can make those informed choices for yourself, but at the same time, you can take an active role, a leadership role, when you see things that seem to be inequitable, and speak to your elected representative to say, hey, why is this happening? Why in this particular postal code with a certain low income do we find, at the local store, hardly any fresh fruits and vegetables, just canned and processed foods, whereas you find stuff more available in other, food deserts, we call them, and those sorts of things. So perhaps consider taking that kind of leadership role to make some change.
Super, and we'll make sure that
my name is
you
Judy Young. Okay, so if you watch a lot of news like I do, okay, CP24, CBC, CTV Newsnet, and even CNN, and a lot of time they give you different reports. All of a sudden, drinking wine is no longer good, not even half of a glass. Not too long ago, they said moderate, 2 for women or whatever number for men, and all of a sudden, if they go by that rule, you now feel that, oh my God, I've been drinking too much. So, and coffee was bad and now it's good, and tomato is supposed to be good and now it's bad. So we don't know what to do, right?
That's a great question. That's good. So, thank you very much, Judy. Dr. Ahmed, you have been the least punishing in terms of your responses, so you start.
Well, I think she may have missed my presentation this morning because I used that as an exact example, right? One day we hear coffee is good, one day we hear it's bad, right? And so I think you missed my presentation. There's a gene that can explain that. People metabolize foods differently. There's also a gene for the alcohol connection. And in some populations, moderate consumption of alcohol is protective. The evidence is overwhelming. But in other populations where they don't have as frequent that gene, you see that alcohol causes adverse effects. So the problem with a lot of these organizations and committees that look at the totality of evidence, they just look at the average number of publications on a particular topic and come to generalized and very safe conclusions. But at the end of the day, what the science, the emerging science is showing us unequivocally is in a lot of these cases, it does depend on the individual, and it's largely based on their genetics. But again, one of my slides said, how do we balance population-based recommendations with public health advice? And there is a balance, and I think sometimes, even with like coffee, the recommendations are everyone can consume up to 4 cups of coffee a day safely. Well, that's only good for half the population. For the other half, they need to limit to no more than 2 cups. So because not everyone has access to their genetic information, perhaps our guidelines should be reduced to be more prudent and to protect the more vulnerable, to say everyone can consume up to 2 cups a day. If you're lucky and you happen to know your genetics and you're a fast metabolizer, well, then go ahead and consume a little bit more. So it's all about the individual, and I think we're going to see more and more of that science. It just needs to take some time before it becomes accepted by the broader community and the guideline setters.
Great, thank you. Speak.
Sure, I agree as well. Meanwhile, I think we have to be careful about reports as well. We always seek the advice of the expert. So whatever the example you have, you have to seek that advice, since there is so many factors as well. It can get to the level of gene level that can influence many things. So it's not just the report. Go back to the science. So we do produce the science for a reason. We get novel ideas and novel, basically, findings. And the best one to advise you is the medical, basically, professional. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I can add too much to what has been said, other than where you see a husband and wife, and I see the test from both, and you think they have the same meals and their profile is different. The individual they have different genes, but also inflammation of the gut will make a difference how you absorb things. So, until you test, then you really can't get a good picture of what's really happening.
Kevin?
I think the job of government is to listen to the experts, so I'm going to pass the mic. But I will say that I am missing the ability to process alcohol because I get the Asian flush. So I know I need to do more testing to better understand what I can or cannot process and absorb and so on.
Super good.
Excellent question. And as a dietitian, I can demonstrate the partnership of government and science in the case of alcohol. Health Canada was one of the first countries in the world to put out low-risk alcohol drinking guidelines, and you can go on your phones and find them. It's a powerful tool that gives you quantities and amounts for men and women. There is no amount of alcohol that's completely safe.
I'll say this too, apropos to what Kevin said about his gene, because he's Asian. My family comes from Ireland. We love potatoes, and we think that beer and wine is a food group. So there you go. Listen, I want to thank all of you for your attention today, and I really want to give a shout out to you panelists. I thought your comments were particularly fantastic, and I'm really, really grateful to all of you for participating. I want to thank you as the young reporter for ACPN. You did a superb job all day, and it really helped with National Nutrition Day, and I want to thank you on behalf of the panel for you being here and the questions that you asked. I want to say this too, because it's not very often that you get to spend an afternoon with a member of Parliament. So I do want to thank you, particularly Kevin, for being here today and for adding so much to this dialogue. I think it's important that you're here, but we know that you wanted to be here too, and that makes us feel very, very confident. So thank you for being here particularly. And thanks all of you for your attention.